You're asking me what the story is? Me? I said, just give me an idea, sir. I made Dharmender a star, and you, a ranked newcomer, asking me for the story? Me? How dare you? I knew that the visual image of a naked man standing on stage with his arms outstretched with his back to the audience would absolutely shock the hell out of an audience. And Stardust then jumped on this when they realized she had mental problems, saying, Parveen Babi has gone crazy and Kabir Bedi and her relationship with Kabir Bedi is what caused this breakdown in her. And I was blamed for her mental state.
Hi, Mr. Kabir Bedi, and welcome to the Quint.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Suresh. Looking forward to our conversation.
I want to start by asking you about this picture on the cover of your memoir. It's such a beautiful photo taken by Terry O'Neill.
That's
right.
What
are your memories of the photo shoot? When was it taken?
This was in the late 70s, just after my success in the Sandokan series in Europe that made me a big star there. And I wanted some good pictures taken. And Terry O'Neill was like the Annie Leibovitz of his age. He photographed Elton John, rock stars, royalty. To be photographed by Terry O'Neill was very special. So I got to him through various friends and persuaded him to photograph me. And he did that. And he picked out one picture. He said, this picture, when he finally showed them to me, and he said, this one's really good, Kabir. There's something good about it, special about it. Now, coming from you, Terry, that's huge for me. So I kept this picture in my collection all these years. And when it was time to pick a picture for my book, my wife said, that's the one it's got to be. And I said, I agree with you completely. I was thinking of a more contemporary picture of me, sort of in a jacket and jeans and casuals. She said, no, that's the one. And it was great because it recorded me at a time of my great triumph in Italy. And it was one of the best pictures ever taken of me by the great Terry O'Neill.
I agree completely. So you interviewing the Beatles as a 19-year-old, representing on the radio, it was an amazing story. You asking John Lennon if he had tried LSD. but you must have been pretty angry and disappointed that that interview is no longer available and was probably just carelessly recorded over.
I was working for All India Radio at the time because I basically had to work my way through college. And you're right. The very fact that All India Radio, because they had no money for new tapes, taped another program over that interview and lost that record was so heart-wrenching for me that it made me think about everything in life. The fact that I didn't want to continue working with All India Radio and television, the fact that I needed to find other directions in my life. And that's what made me leave Delhi with 700 rupees in my pocket to seek a new future in Bombay.
It's unbelievable. How could they not preserve that interview?
It was broadcasting gold. I could have made a fortune selling it to any other network. But I was a cub reporter with All India Radio, and I felt I owed it to them, and I took it to them. And eventually, when they erased it, it just ended up erasing my relationship with All India Radio. So, in some strange, convoluted way, I have to say I thank them for doing that because it made me rethink my life. Otherwise, I was happy to sort of be a radio and television producer, presenter, executive, wherever that road took me, and I probably might still have been working for them today. So I must thank them for getting me out of Delhi and onto a totally different course, which made this Delhi boy become a huge star in Italy.
Your anecdote about O.P. Ralhan was also hilarious. How you just asked him for the story of the film and he was like, how dare you?
Yes.
It was almost like a sin to ask for a film story if you had to sign up in those days.
It was my rude introduction to Bollywood. When O.P. Ralhan had this enormous ego and he looked like Walter Matthau and he walked with a limp and he had this loud voice. And he just had this big hit in Phool Aur Patthar, which made Dharmender a star. So when he said he wanted to sign me, I said, sir, what's the story like? He said, you're asking me what the story is? Me? I said, just give me an idea, sir. I made Dharmender a star, and you, a rank newcomer, asking me for the story? Me? How dare you? Don't talk like this. Just if you want to be a star. So I signed the film thinking I was going to be the star of the film. It turned out I wasn't. O.P. Dalhan was the star of the film himself, and Helen, the legendary dancer, was the heroine. And so I was naturally most upset. But then, because the film flopped, I didn't get the blame for it. So I have to thank him for that. But I also thank him for being my first producer. But more importantly, he was a man with a very big heart. He came to my rescue when another driver rammed into my car in Bandra, and the police tried to pin the blame on me, and he went to the police station and fought for me. So I have a lot to thank Lalan Saab for. But my first meeting with him was rather shattering, because I realized that apart from the fact that in those days nobody got any scripts, they just got narrations, I wasn't even going to get a narration from him.
Kabir sir, after this experience and other several initial experiences, you must have been quite clear that you were an odd man out in the film industry. You did not want to do playback singing. You weren't comfortable dancing to songs.
Right.
But luckily, Sandokan happened, right? And you went on to become a superstar in Europe. But what if Sandokan did not happen? Did you have a plan B?
I believed at the time that being a dramatic actor was good enough to be a leading man. I was very wrong. If I'd seriously wanted to be a leading man, I would have gone there and learned how to do song and dance numbers as part of what actors have to do. Every actor of the era, whether it was Rajesh Khanna or Vinod Khanna or even Amitabh Bachchan and other actors, Jitendra, etc., all of them would sing and dance their way through films. So it was stupid of me to assume that I could make a career as a leading man without singing and dancing. I'd have had to think of becoming a villain or a strong character actor. But since I wasn't comfortable singing and dancing, my thoughts were maybe I need to go abroad. And that's what helped me make the decision when the Italians asked me to come to Rome for an audition at my own expense to try for that role. Fortunately, it turned out well.
Okay. Now, sir, you've written about moving to Mumbai with the plan of becoming a filmmaker.
Yes.
Did you at any point ever write a script or pitch yourself as a filmmaker for any project? Did you make any attempt of getting into filmmaking at all?
I didn't seriously set about the journey of becoming a filmmaker, because acting happened because of my success in Tughlaq, playing the lead role in Girish Karnad's first play. So I thought, ठीक है, इंडस्ट्री में घुस जाओ, बाद में देखते हैं क्या होता है, कहीं ना कहीं डायरेक्शन का चांस मिल जाएगा या किसी को प्रोजेक्ट दिखा देंगे. And I thought I'd make my way as a director there. But then so many other things happened, including the coming of the Italians, that I never followed through on acting, on filmmaking, because acting took over my life completely. And that's what became my focus.
Right. Now, since you mentioned Tughlaq, I want to ask you, you've written about, how you had to stand butt naked almost in front of an audience. The first time you did it, I'm sure it must have got easier with other shows, but the first time you did it, what was going through your mind? Were you nervous? Were you scared how people are going to react when the curtains go up?
No, I wasn't nervous at all. I knew it would be enormous shock value. Although I wore a langot that covered the family jewels in front, but I knew that the visual image of a naked man standing on stage with his arms outstretched, with his back to the audience, would absolutely shock the hell out of an audience. And every show was the same. The minute the curtains parted and they saw me standing, arms outstretched, every muscle defined in top lighting, and looking completely nude, the first reaction of the audience was always, oh my God, that kind of thing. So it was a collective gasp from people. And that scene alone got me instantly known throughout the whole of Bombay society, and actually paved the way for my success into films. It was a terrific play. Girish's first in English, and Alec directed it in an absolutely magical way. It had the cream of Bombay theatre, poster painted by M.F. Hussain, the best of everyone. And it was Bombay theatre at its best. And I was headlining the cast, so I got all the glory. So I'm very grateful to Girish and Alec and everyone for launching me as an actor that became known.
So you've written quite openly about your personal life in your memoir as well. And you've written about how after a few years of marriage with Protima, you both agreed to have an open marriage. I'm sure that was not an easy decision to make. Did it involve some amount of emotional turmoil as well?
Of course it did. Of course it did. And what I've explored in my book actually is the very unconventional way in which Protima and I first got together, lived together, which is scandalous in those days. And what happens? I mean, what is it that makes a normal marriage become an open marriage? What are the steps along the way that happen that create that situation? That I think you'll have to read my book to find out all the juicy bits as to how that ended to an open marriage. And then what it's like to live in an open marriage. And what are the consequences of that open marriage? So these things I've explored openly because even then, one was fairly open about it. And my life was always an open book in many ways and often written about, sometimes inaccurately, but I always felt truth will out. And in many cases it did, and where it hasn't, I've set the record straight now.
Okay. You know, the impression that I personally got from reading about your past relationships, the way you've written it, is that the one with Parveen Babi is perhaps the most special and most precious to you. How disturbing was it then when the media accused you of being like a trigger point in the state of Parveen Babi's mental health?
Well, let me just say right up front, Suresh, that the most wonderful, loving, caring, nurturing relationship I have is with my wife, Parveen Dosanjh, who's my present wife. She has given me all the empowerment, the fulfillment that I sought. But coming back to Parveen Babi, we had planned to move abroad and live abroad. She was planning an international career along with me, and actually got her the lead role in my next television series. A number of very painful and dramatic events, all of which I've chronicled in my book, brought her back to India, as well as developments in India. And of course, Stardust then jumped on this when they realized she had mental problems, saying, Parveen Babi has gone crazy, and Kabir Bedi and her relationship with Kabir Bedi is what caused this breakdown in her. And I was blamed for her mental state, which of course wasn't true at all for reasons I've clearly explained in my book. But it was very painful to be written about in such terrible terms. And at the time, I didn't say anything about it because I knew that she needed to resurrect her career. She needed the sympathy, and I wanted to make sure she was okay. I thought truth will out. Well, truth didn't out. 5-6 years later, I gave an interview to Stardust saying what I said in my book, basically, that I was not the cause. And then I explained why we really broke up, how she was the one who really left me, etc. So the record has been set straight on that. But yes, at the time, it's very painful to have all these things written about you. But again, I was living abroad and I didn't have to face the backlash of that. And which is why I could afford to be magnanimous and say, let them say what they want to say right now. I'll set the record straight in time.
But sir, what's also wonderful is that in all these years, you've never sort of felt that marriage is not for you. You never shied away from the institution of marriage. How is that?
You know, Suresh, I'm the eternal romantic. I like to share my life with the woman that I'm in love with. And otherwise, I find it a very lonely journey. As stars, we go to these wonderful places, meet wonderful people, great locations. We come back to an empty hotel room. You know, there's a feeling, there's a need in me to share that. So I've always believed in marriage. And for most of my life, I have been married. Now, the fact that some of these marriages did not work out, each for their own reason, each with their own logic, is one thing. But I never gave up on the concept of marriage. Even with Parveen Babi, my present wife, I proposed to her in Rome, and she accepted. But she didn't say when, because she regarded me as a repeat offender. And so it took her a while to basically feel secure enough to marry me. And it was 10 years from that proposal that she accepted to finally actually marrying me in Mumbai. And so it was, marriage is something that I believe in, because I believe in love and I believe in the need to share my life. And so I'll be a search for that love that I could really live with and share my life with in the fullest terms. Otherwise, if I was just wanting to have a great time, I could have stayed single. I had all the freedoms of a single man, had all the women I wanted without worrying about marriage and alimonies and children and all the responsibilities that come with that. Even with my ex-wives, I've met all my economic responsibilities, which is why we remain friends even till today, and which I regard as no small achievement, as any divorced man will tell you. And there's a picture of me around the Christmas tree with Nikki, who was my wife at the time, together with Ishel and Protima, all sharing a wonderful Christmas dinner together. So that's how my relationships have ended. Even if things come to the end of a branch and you have to move on, what remains is the true testament of who you are and what that relationship meant to you. And in my case, I was able to remain friends and keep searching for the right marriage, which I did till the very end.
Right, right. So, I want to talk about your stardom in Italy. It almost seems unbelievable that, an Indian actor was such a rage in Europe back then. Today, thanks to social media, even if somebody has a special appearance in an international project, it's blown out of proportion. And there
Right.
you were almost a demigod in Italy.
Yes.
Thanks to Sandokan. Did the industry back home here and your extended friends and family know what a big deal it was? I mean, you've spoken about how you took your family there, children went there, but those who never saw you in Italy or saw that fanfare around you, did they
Right.
know what a big deal it was?
I guess it was naive of me that I didn't make such a big deal about it all India. The industry realized, because when I came back, the industry realized that I'd had great success in Italy. Parveen was there with me. She talked about it. And Kabir Bedi picture बहुत hit हो गई Italy में, बहुत बड़ा star बन गया. But I didn't really, there weren't any PR agencies. There weren't the social media. It was the age of the telephone and the telegram. So,
Right.
and I'm not really that great a self-promoter. I really am not. And I just thought, those that need to know in my circle and the industry know I'm trying to go abroad anyway. So why go to every region of India and make a huge song and dance about what happened to me in Italy? And I was busy trying to finish up my work before going back abroad. So my whole focus was getting out of India. And then in time, I gave Sandokan for free to Doordarshan, which they showed in the early 80s, again, without any fanfare. It was a government thing. They didn't realize what they had. And I gave it to them for free because they didn't have foreign exchange to buy any foreign programs. But still, millions saw it because Doordarshan was the only game in town. So many people who I meet even today say, we saw Sandokan in our childhood, and it was really something that defined your image for us, etc., etc. So, but most of my career, I've been over 30 years, I've lived abroad. Bollywood was merely sort of interludes in between. But I did manage to keep a kind of presence alive in India all the time, because in between I'd do Bollywood films like Khoon Bhari Maang and Yilgar, etc. I'd come back and attend or conduct film festivals. I kept myself in the public eye off and on enough for people to not forget me. And that paid off enormously.
Right. Now, about an entire generation of Indians know you thanks to Khoon Bhari Maang. You've written about how Rakesh Roshan called you and offered you the role, and you were doing Magnum PI with Tom Selleck back then.
That's
What
correct.
what made you come back here for Khoon Bhari Maang? And did anybody discourage you not to do that? Not to leave the West and come back here and probably get typecast as a villain or something like that?
No, not at all. I was very happy to do this. Firstly, I knew Rakesh Roshan. Secondly, he said, Kabir, I won't do the film if you don't do it, because I need somebody who can play the role of a hero and turn out to be a villain. And no hero is willing to do that. So I said, okay, who's the heroine? He said, Rekha. The minute he said Rekha, I said, done. Because Rekha was at the prime of her success as an actress. She'd won the National Award. She'd done Umrao Jaan. She was already iconic even then. So for me to be paired with Rekha in a film directed by Rakesh Roshan, who'd had big hits before that, was an irresistible project. So there was no question of anyone dissuading me. It's the project I wanted to do, a film I was glad I did, because it turned out in the end to be my biggest Bollywood hit.
So you written about how you filed for bankruptcy in Los Angeles and how you had to sell your Bulgari gold necklace, something that you had brought at the peak of your success in Italy. And this comes right after a very personal loss of your son.
Yes.
What is it that kept you going through this phase, which could probably be the darkest and lowest phases of your life? What was it that kept you going? What was it that gave you hope?
Suresh, my book has all the thrills and chills of a roller coaster ride, because it has incredible highs and incredible lows, and a number of them at various points. That's all part of my story. But at that point that you mentioned, I reached financial ruin, not because of films, not because of alimony, not because of having to educate my son at Carnegie Mellon University, etc. It was investments I made, big investments I made, believing that I was onto an absolutely sure shot thing that were going to be great winners. I bet on Apple stock, thinking Apple is going to be the greatest company in the world. Well, it is. It's the most valuable company in history today. But at that time, it halved in value from the time I invested, and I'd leveraged myself, so I really suffered. I invested in Netscape, which had all the promise of Google, and who would have thought that Netscape could be unseated? They're 80% of the market. You had to pay to install them. They were the biggest search engine, the only one of any significance. And then Microsoft comes along and releases Microsoft Explorer for free. And I thought, they can't possibly displace Netscape, for God's sake. They did. They wiped the floor with Netscape in 2 years, and with it, my investments. So that's what drove me to bankruptcy. It was the big investments I made thinking I was absolutely right, because I'd researched it down to the bone, down to the marrow. Huge misjudgments. And then, as you mentioned, I faced my son's passing in the middle of it also. I had to literally think of, once again, like when I began my life, what do I want to do? How do I get out of this? And you go back to the same resilience, the same grit, the same courage and fight back quality that it took for a boy with 700 rupees in his pocket heading to Mumbai from Delhi. A lot of inner strength is needed to lift yourself out of a dark place. Today, in today's climate, a lot of people are suffering from depression and loneliness and lack of human contact. And I know the amount of mental energy it takes to lift yourself out of the dark place into a place of positivity. You can't say just be positive. It doesn't happen. You've lost your job, you've lost your loved ones, you've lost your money. How do you suddenly become positive? It takes enormous strength. And I must also say that I had shared my parents' spiritual journeys too. My father from Guru Nanak, from my mother being a Buddhist nun, and I'd actually gone to Burma and been a Buddhist monk for a period of my life. Shaven head, robes, etc., at a very young age. But what I learned in terms of meditation and understanding the way the mind works always gave me a source of great strength in not letting my mind run away with me, by being able to observe my thoughts and channel my thoughts. And so I went into those resources and rebuilt. And how I rebuilt my life, that's in my book, because I think that, again, is a great lesson for people to learn. How do you rebuild your life out of the ashes of ruin?
Absolutely, absolutely. So my last question to you is, looking back, what would Kabir Bedi today advise a 19-year-old Kabir Bedi? What would
boy.
be one big advice to him?
Well, first, I'd tell my younger self, you were right to take the path less traveled. And congratulations for having the courage to take the path less traveled. Secondly, I'd say, know that success passes and failure passes, because all these things are part of being human. The pain, the pleasure, the euphoria, and the heart-wrenching things you go through in life. It's all part of being human. Fourthly, I'd say, and thirdly, I'd say, be far more careful with your money. Because when you grow up in a family which is in ideals, living for their causes, and suddenly come into a lot of money, you think it's there forever. You think you can play with it, do what you want. Money will always be there now. Well, if you're not careful with it, that money can evaporate fast. So be careful with money. It's important. Be responsible with money. And also, I'd say, be less trusting of people. People should earn your trust. Don't just give it to them for free, because some of those betrayals have cost me dearly.
Those are absolutely valuable words of wisdom. It's an absolute pleasure talking to you, Kabir Bedi, and I totally loved reading your book.
Thank you so much, Suresh, for having read the book, for having enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Suresh.
We are truthful, unafraid and independent because of you. Now you can help our reporting from the ground. Go to thequint.com, click Become a Member tab, choose a plan and pay. Because the truth is worth it.